Welcome to another Rust and WebAssembly working group meeting. Thanks for coming out, y'all. Um, so, uh, First up on our agenda is RC triage, and I don't think there's anything new, but there is the one,
There's some old.
yeah, the RC about serve and watch. Um, any updates there?
Yeah, unfortunately not. Stuff at work has kicked up very hard, and then I went on vacation, and so that's been complicated. I certainly super want those features, and I think like the general design conversations that we already have are there. Um, yeah, I guess for me, like it's not entirely clear from what we've already like what's already been discussed on the issue exactly what like the bigger contentious portions of it are. I don't know if there's like particular elements that we think need a little bit more attention. I guess I'm trying to like focus the task slightly smaller so it'll be more easily accomplished in my limited time.
Yeah. I didn't get the impression that there was really much that was contentious there. Um, I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Um,
That's kind of what I figured as well in terms of like if like you and Drager basically are cool with the concept and if you want to skim it and just see the general idea, I think that's kind of what we just needed is kind of a just buy-in from folks who work very closely with Weizenpack. We should be good to go. I mean, this will still take a lot of time to implement and like fully review and all that. And so this is just more of does it sound like a good idea? Is the general architecture okay? Stuff like that.
cool. All right. I will I will do that directly after this meeting. But like in general, like as I said when I was like, please put this on hold for a second. Like the general direction I think matters. I do think for something like less like watch and more serve might have a couple like devils in the details about exactly how we want to do it, and like that implementation part might be interesting. Um, but yeah, we can. I think yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
I'm sure
Scheduling things for directly after meetings is a good way for me to make sure to do it. So
I'm sure there'll be like details of things that like could go either way. For example, like if we want to use a pre-built binary that just does local serving, or do we want something with like a little more integration where we actually write our own server and
right.
maybe get something out of that. But like that's also the kind of thing that I feel like we can kick down the road to some degree and just like get like these commands introduced doing the basic thing and then kind of move on from there.
Okay, if we feel cool with it, like with the RFC process, because sometimes the RFCs are like the documentation of like the, well, anyways, if we're down to just like get something that does it and then like iterate on how we're doing it, I'm super fine with it. Certainly the user-facing API is relatively straightforward, and I don't anticipate changing regardless of what we would do with the implementation. So I will comment this, and that sounds great.
All right. So we've had our 6-week sprint over for a little while and have been planning the next 6-week sprint for a couple weeks. Do we want to start nominating things now, or how do we feel about the sprint format? I guess.
I mean, I'll say I really like it, even though I'm the person who is bucking it and not listening to it. Stuff at work has just been like incredibly complicated, and then life stuff. But I found it really nice to be able to like chunk like what we're going to be doing in a release. Like I think that even though it is now 20 days late, the like next Weizenpack release is like a good chunk of like really great things that we wanted to get done. And so I don't know, I think that I've enjoyed it. I don't know what other people have been thinking.
My thought is that 6 weeks seems maybe arbitrary, but like I'm not advocating for 5 weeks or 7 weeks. I wonder if it makes sense to just like have a mechanism of like grouping, like essentially milestones across repositories of just saying these are the things we think are most important, and so we should work on getting all of these done. And then once we get all of them done, then nominate the next set of things to go forward.
Yeah, I definitely think that makes sense. Like, even though there's things that are like waiting to land on WASMPack, like the next set of things, like if someone was like walking into WASMPack and trying to decide what to work on, what the big chunk is, like it's not flagged yet. And we probably shouldn't be blocking that. And so even if it's not like exactly 6 weeks, like that type of planning I think is very useful. And we definitely see a ton of people, like there was a number of times I think that all of us were like, someone came into the chat and said, what should I work on now? And either we said it or someone else said like the sprint tag.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of those converted.
Yeah, it's probably much fewer than we thought because of that. How we learned later that if you're not a member of the repo organization or of the GitHub organization, then you can't view all of the issues labeled with something across the whole organization.
Okay, well, there's a, I'm going to say vaguely easy fix, but I can't like do this work. But the work to do is relatively straightforward. Is like we have our website, we have wanted to like update the landing page. That hasn't happened, but we should do it. But we could have a page that just makes that API call and dumps it on a website.
You could do that.
The GitHub API is like incredibly like simple to use, I've found. So,
Yeah.
but
Are you volunteering?
I think neither of you want me to volunteer to do this because you desperately need me to get some other stuff done. So I'm not volunteering.
The next person who asks for a good first issue, we can point them at this meta issue for finding good first issues.
Yeah, one thing I will say is like we do have all of this kind of, debt's not the right word because it's more like things we want but just haven't found time to do, kind of around website stuff. I don't know if we maybe want to try and like evangelize that more and see if we can't collect like a somebody who wants to join who's like very passionate about doing website stuff. With WebAssembly, we should have like at least a large portion of the audience being front-end developers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. I think the thing is like all of these kind of outreach pushes require someone taking a leadership role to like guide people through that and like act as a point person. And like I don't really have the cycles myself like I did, 6 months ago.
Totally.
For a lot of this stuff. So
I hear that.
yeah.
Well, we should at least maybe try and keep like a pony list of these things.
And this specifically isn't too bad in the sense of like maybe we can have one link that shows everything, but we can also have 3 links that show the 3 main repositories, which have 99% of the issues. And so it could be like, yeah. So like that could just be like just sharing this paper doc and has all the stuff, appropriate stuff in there.
Okay, so do we want to go through and nominate new sprint issues and stuff now?
I'd be down for that.
Seems reasonable.
I'm actually like, usually when we do these planning things, I have an idea, and now I'm like not really sure. But
how about we just dump some notes in the agenda doc, and then can fill out and assign issues after the fact, after the meeting. So one of my personal goals right now, thank you, Alex, is so.
Wait, what happened? Oh, did you make the agenda?
He filled in exactly what I was about to say.
Oh, I see.
Agenda, yeah. So the WebIDL bindings proposal has been, I guess the actual like spec text or anything is still missing. It's just the explainer that was kind of updated maybe a month or so ago. But what I've been doing is I've been starting kind of the planning work and a library and stuff for thinking how can we take WASM bindgen from being like this vague concept of future compatible with the WebIDL bindings into, okay, we have an idea of what WebIDL bindings are going to look like, at least in a fuzzy sense now. And can we actually turn this into a real polyfill instead of like a spiritual polyfill? And so I guess basically getting like a proof of concept for the like kind of straw proposal would be what I'm focused on for about the next 6 weeks. And then basically a lot of that stuff needs to be factored out into issues, but the issue that Alex linked does have basically an overview of the plan as it is right now.
So, I mean, sounds like a good idea. I have to read through this to have more feedback.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to be doing for the next 6 weeks.
It's largely just an internal organization inside of WebAssembly. This won't
Yeah,
actually
totally.
have a visible effect.
It may have an effect on like the kinds of things we do with like dictionaries and stuff. Whereas right now, dictionaries, so like WebIDL dictionaries, which are essentially just untyped objects that have certain properties, key values. Right now, what we do is we create JS objects and then pass them over. But with WebIDL bindings, they're more like structural, where you would synthesize them from sequences of WASM values.
So you're thinking like we should add, I hear that as like we should add more features to WASM bindgen, like the WASM, like if you return a tuple, I should be able to say that field comes from this thing, that field comes from this thing, basically the WebIDL expressions language or WebIDL binding expression.
Right. I'm not totally sure because like we have to balance this with breaking changes and stuff. If we do it purely additively, maybe I don't know. I haven't thought about it all the way, but like there are like a couple impedance mismatches. But like I don't know, for this kind of initial push, it'll be basic stuff, right? Like it'll be passing strings, passing objects. All right, so do y'all have any things you'd like to nominate for the next 6 weeks or things that you plan on working on?
Yeah, I was just slowly filling out my section. So I think mostly for WASMPack, it's going to be the couple of things that got bumped. And then I have like a couple of, well, one of them might actually be big, but we'll see. So the things that got bumped, like the big one that I'd want for the next sprint is the like isomorphic target, the one like WASMPack builds you all the types of things and you get a package that can support Node and all the types or whatever. One issue that came in that seemed like kind of just like some nice low-hanging fruit was the like being able to run with like the plus nightly thing. What is it that people are wanting to use just nightly for with Rust WASM now?
It could just be they're using other nightly stuff and then it happens to also be a WASM project.
Oh. I guess I was just wondering if something like do you think, well, does async await work? Oh, right, it does. I saw that you recently updated the JS promises to futures thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That did you publish that release yet?
Yeah, just did so.
Okay.
It was like a couple of days ago, wasn't it? Or
yeah.
The publish just happened today, or the version bump or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll tweet that from the account because I bet people will be excited about that.
Yeah, it's freaking huge. A lot of people ask for that.
Yeah.
I know I've used plus nightly just to test compiler bugs, and I've wished I could have WASMPack plus nightly. I mean,
yeah. I again, I haven't made it yet, and saying something as easy is never a good idea. But I think that should be incredibly like achievable. We've been pushing this npm install wasampack thing down the road, and I think it'd be nice to just get that done. And then like the one that I think might be big that I think is interesting that I like just saw on Twitter. I guess Parcel is really pushing forward on its like Rust WebAssembly stuff. Did you all see that at all?
No.
Yeah, someone I follow on Twitter, Sarah Vieira, was tweeting about it. Let me see if I can find it. Anyways, it sounds like Parcel has reignited and is really pushing the Rust WebAssembly story in particular. And so, oh no, I just faved, so now I'll never find it.
Good thing. Are they using Wasampack and Cargo and everything, or are they still like invoking Rust C themselves?
I have basically no idea. I literally just saw it like 30 minutes ago. And the reason I saw it is because Twitter showed me Sean Larkin responding to this person being like, do you need a Webpack example? So I replied and I was like, the Rust WASM docs are basically a Webpack example. You're fine, Sean. But here, I'll share this. Yeah, I don't know what Code Sandbox is. It looks probably like some online editor thing, but they're doing a bunch of like Parcel Rust WebAssembly stuff, which is cool. We probably should retweet this from the Rust WASM account. I'm not entirely sure how Parcel's doing it, but if Parcel's really trying to push on this and there's people involved, like I know Sarah kind of, and she's very cool. And so there might be an opportunity here to try and reconnect with that Parcel team and get them into the docs. And that won't be, I don't think, a very large technical challenge, but it will be a fair amount of work. So
I don't know, this looks pretty similar to the other Parcel stuff, which is Hello World works, but their Hello World is adding two numbers, and so there's no WASM integration, there's no...
Oh,
basically,
really?
as soon as you import something or if you need something from the host environment, it tends to not fall down. I know like the Parcel built-in support, at least as of a year ago, it only supported WASM modules that import nothing, and I don't think that's changed. So.
Yeah, well, I'm going to reach out to her and just see. Maybe if she's excited about it, she can help us, like, as an ambassador to the Parcel team, try and, like, push that stuff forward.
Yeah.
We'll see, though. Yeah, so those are the things that were, like, top of mind for me. And then, like, obviously also the, like, watch and serve commands. If we can, like, agree that we're, like, down with the direction, I think we can do that. Depending on when we'd want to like get the next sprint out, which is like hilarious because the previous sprint is not out yet. So I'm in the process of doing that today. I don't know if watch and serve will ship in this one or if we want to do it for the next one. I don't know if either of you are like interested in it or if it's like Draeger and I, or I guess also Draeger, if you're listening and you would be interested in implementing those, you should type something in the chat. Okay, cool. Well, if Draeger wants to pick those up, then I think we could probably get those in too.
All right. Anything on your end, Alex?
Nah, that was the one WASM engine thing, and I don't think there's a lot of other major stuff in like debugging or multi-threading or profiling or measuring or Walrus. Yeah. So
the one thing that I've been thinking about for Walrus is that we've been kind of kicking multiple return values down the road, and especially with WebIDL bindings, this is going to become more important. Like receiving a dictionary, it's going to kind of explode into multiple values.
Can we not? No, I know, you're not wrong.
And I don't know, I feel like I have a pretty clear picture of something we could do. I don't know if it's like the best thing to do, but I feel like the alternative to like essentially enforcing the stack discipline on edges and having like different kinds of edges is to switch to a CFG with basic blocks and then implement relooper. So
well, in any case, trying to make concrete progress on this during a 6-week sprint is probably a good idea. This is something where it's becoming more and more pressing as WebIDL bindings moves forward.
Yeah, so I can,
Do you have like a Twitter size length explanation of relooper?
yeah,
I'm
so this
looking
is,
over here now and I'm like, what is this?
yes, this is what Emscripten does to, as part of its like LLVM IR into JavaScript.
Right.
LLVM IR is like basic blocks, and like you can jump anywhere, right? There's like go-tos, whatever. And JavaScript obviously doesn't have that. And so you have to kind of like turn that back into ifs and loops and stuff like that. And then there's like cases where it breaks down and you have to kind of have like a switch statement, which is like, which basic block am I going to go to, essentially. But in most
The
cases,
comments on this repo are really good.
yeah. And so we kind of didn't do that with Walrus. We were like, we want this to be basically exactly WebAssembly, but in a tree form. And then, yeah, the problem is that multiple return values break the tree-ness and make it, I don't know, I guess more of a DAG.
Something like that.
Yeah, because you can have one thing that produces multiple values. So uses of that one thing looks like two edges coming to the same thing. So it's a DAG. Yeah. So I like sketched up an algorithm in a notebook somewhere, and I can write that up into an issue, and maybe compare and contrast that with like maybe adopting relooper kind of thing, or I guess like the other option is to like hack it and like have a really nasty kind of special case for return values. But as you might be able to tell, I don't like that alternative.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. No, that's not true. LVM will pick up support for multi-value, and we will have to handle this within like actual optimized code and everything. So yeah. Anyway, let's add this to the 6-week sprint. I don't think there's an issue for this yet, but adding multi-value support, adding true multi-value support to Walrus.
So that seems like a good plan for the next 6 weeks, unless, I don't know, Drager, if you had anything in particular you wanted to add, or anyone else. Okay, so
One thing I can say is like once the stuff that we have listed, at least for WASMPack, like for the next sprint, like once this sprint and that sprint lands, I don't really know what's next. Like, do we have thoughts? Like usually we've been like just pulling out this huge backlog of stuff, but we're like kind of getting through it.
did the WASM stuff land?
That's gonna land basically today. It's the stuff that Alex has. It's blocked on this generate PR, which I just got. It will land today, so that's gonna happen.
So the only other tool that I've regularly used in WASM projects that we don't have support in WASM pack after we have this WASM ops support is WASM snip.
Right.
And then maybe WASM2JS as well. If we're gonna say that's our, like basically I guess like we were investigating using Walrus to generate JavaScript, but then all of a sudden Alone and some other Emscripten people poured a bunch of effort into WASM2JS. And so maybe that calculus doesn't make sense anymore. But like, I would say that's the other missing piece of like toolchain polish is like having automatic like compile my WASM to JS for IE11.
Yeah, I could see that being super nice. And compared to WASM snip, the WASM to JS thing, I feel like requires very little design.
Of how like it's going to integrate with like all of our imports and stuff, like which I don't think is like interesting, but it's just like something we have to get right, and there's probably going to be little issues there.
Actually, Well, yeah. Anyway, we can figure it out. I suspect
Cool.
it may not be the hardest thing in the world. We need to talk with Webpack and kind of like what's the expected way to do that. And I feel like we probably have to get Wasm Bindgen to be doing stuff as opposed to Wasm Pack in the sense of like the generated code's probably going to have to be a little bit different. But these things working all in concert together, and if it only works with Webpack or like the bundler target, that makes a lot of sense. And then I think it's just going from there.
Yeah. Do we think that we want to do RFCs for these two? Or like have those, start having those in our heads? Or I feel like compared to like watch and serve, like, I don't know. I think yeah. If watch and serve was an RFC, then I kind of feel like these should be, but they all feel, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like the end goal will be like Wasm Pack build dash dash enable i11 compat, and that's it. And that's literally all you do. And then
I'm
otherwise, it's
definitely
just
going to change the name of that flag.
yeah, yeah. Modular the whole bike shedding aspect. Like
Totally.
just some opt in, and then it's kind of just how it works under the hood, which like we can talk about on RC, but
Do you think we shouldn't do it by default?
um, we could
I don't
mess.
know how costly it is, but it's, I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm always like, support more things.
If it's not costly, I just kind of assume that it will be. But if it's not, we can figure out how to make it not costly. Then
It
yeah,
probably has some cost. I just didn't expect it to be that much.
yeah.
But
If that's
what's like,
true, then
What kind of
yeah,
cost are we talking here in terms of just build time, or?
I would want to make sure that like if you aren't using IE11, it should be pretty lightweight in terms of code size impact for what you're actually doing. So like if you when you load the web page download the JS unconditionally, that would be a no-no. So, but if otherwise, if it's an extra 50 bytes to say like, do I support WebAssembly, fetch that, or fetch this, then I think turning it on by default might make total sense.
yeah, I think the cost is primarily code size. I mean, one thing, once we run out of things on WebWise Impact to do, which it's probably premature that I'm saying we're doing that, is like, we've never really been concerned with super how long WAS Impact takes, except for when we were originally cargo installing things, which was bonkers. Um, so there could be like trying to optimize build times. But I haven't heard people complain that WAS Impact takes too long ever since we've been caching those binaries.
Yeah.
Rust is always going to dwarf it, like Rust build times.
Yeah. I don't think so. I don't think the WASM opt stuff went through an RFC, did it? So I think WASM snip is maybe even less interesting than WASM opt, and so like I would say just do like it's clear that like
I couldn't remember what the configuration requirements were for. I knew WASM opt and snip both had it, but I don't remember which one had more.
yeah it's not that much. I guess it does have a little bit more configuration depending on how we do it. I don't know, but it seems pretty clear to me that we can just basically like take like what do we do for WASM opt, do the same thing but for WASM snip, and like change the parts that are specific. Like there's not going to be like -oz or whatever. It's going to instead be like -- snip blah 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 blah. But it feels like basically an instance of the same class of thing. It doesn't feel like there's a large design space, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, that sounds good to me. And once the generate and WASM opt PRs land, like one of the reasons the generate PR is so large is that I did a pretty big refactoring so that using like dropping in new tools is like much easier and we won't have to write the logic for each one. So that should make it even easier to add something like WASM snip.
All right. Shall we move on to status updates? Okay. All right.
Sure.
So I guess the one other part would be, it would be nice if we could get the initial 0.1 release of Glue for the sprint.
Ooh.
Which the status update for Glue is that we have a milestone for the 0.1 release, and it shouldn't be too hard to get it across the finish line. But the caveat to that is like, again, my available cycles are not super high, and I think Glue could really benefit from someone taking a leadership position to try and coordinate a lot of the effort that's going on.
When do we want to start the next sprint?
I was assuming immediately.
Okay. Because I was going to say, like, for me, like, my life is very, very hectic right now because I have a very big looming deadline, which involves going to Berlin and doing some JSConf EU stuff. Once that's over, like, a lot of my time frees up. But this,
Conversely,
like, the next 2 weeks are like a nightmare for me, like, super bad.
it's also Nick, in 5 weeks is Acronia for the CG meeting, and in 6 weeks is the Mozilla All Hands and Whistler.
Yeah.
And then in 7 weeks is another week-long thing for me somewhere in Scandinavia. I don't really quite know where yet. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That would also imply, I mean, if we wanted to wait for those to all go away, we're not doing a 6-week sprint until we hit July. So maybe we can just turn it into a 10-week sprint.
Yeah, like, again, 6-week sprint, it's like 6 weeks of work and then modulo vacations and travel and conferences and stuff, right? And I think it's fine. I think the important part is probably just not like fighting back against scope creep, and by saying like it's 6 weeks worth of work, and like it doesn't matter if it takes 10 weeks, but like it does matter that we don't put, you know, a year's worth of work in one sprint. I guess we have some sort of focus or priority.
I also like the idea that it's kind of it's largely just to check in every 6 weeks. We're like, hey, did we feel like we're doing the right stuff? Do we feel like we're still on the right track? And so that's, I think that makes sense.
All right. Yeah. So debugging. There's a new repo which we talked a little bit about last time, I believe. But now it's an actual repo on Crates.io that you can use. And this is a global allocator that reports all of your allocations and deallocations to an imported function, which, you know, could be anything, but by default is JavaScript. And then that can analyze those allocations and deallocations and provide you with like Valgrind-esque tooling. So I use this to debug a memory leak. You could use it to debug invalid freeze or like double free, stuff like that. Yeah, so just heads up. And any toolchain and workflow polish updates of the last week?
I am, so I finally got the cargo generate PR over the finish line. The testing is not great, but it is fine. And I'm sick of putting it off. Yeah, so one of the things that was holding it up, which I think is very interesting, and I just want to warn you all since you also work on the project, something happened in Clippy, and there's this like redundant closure lint that's like not doing the thing it's supposed to do. And so it started alerting on like a ton of super old code in WASM-Pack. And so I've been like fighting with it. At one point I just turned Clippy off. And so finally, just to get it over the finish line, I put like allow warnings on there. I've talked to Manish and he says that there is a fix in the works and they may backport it to beta. But anyways, that is one thing that's going on. And so if you look at that generate PR, you're going to see some like allow Clippy stuff, which should be red flags. But I've been battling with it for a second, and it's the Clippy's just recommending like something that's wrong. Yeah, so that's going to go in. Then what lands next is WASM-opt, which is going to require just a small amount of tweaking the code that Alex wrote, which is kind of like a bespoke binary install for just WASM-opt. And the generate has the generalized code so that you can just use it generally. So I'll make those small tweaks, land that. And then there's a ton of super awesome like bug fixes and like little things that have landed, as well as some bugs that have been filed. And so I'm going to try and figure out what of those can get snuck into this. And then ideally like finish writing up a changelog and try and get it out tomorrow. So I've already opened up the issue in the PR for the change log. So, but getting those things over I feel bad. I should have broken up the refactor and adding the generate command into 2 different PRs. It's just very, very foolish. And now it's like 2,000 lines of code. So, but yeah, that's what's going on with that. And yeah, I think that's the full update. Anyways, my attention is on WASMPEC for the rest of the day, so, and tomorrow.
As far as WASM bindgen goes, so there's the new release with the support for futures, STUD futures. And then there's also, again, relating to profiling, monitoring, debugging, etc. There's a intrinsic function that allows you to count how many JS values or any refs are in the WASM bindgen heap. And so you can use this to help debug memory leaks that involve holding on to JS values. And then you can also use this to write tests. So you can count how many JavaScript values there are initially, and then do a bunch of operations that should ultimately clean up after themselves, and then count how many JS values there are live in the heap at the end, and basically assert that the beginning and end counts are equal. So yeah, that should be nice. Then yeah, link to the getting WASM bindgen into a proper polyfill for WebIDL bindings. Any other things that I missed? No. Okay. Yeah, so that's everything on the agenda. Anything that didn't get on the agenda?
One thing I was going to say, it's not that it's not on the agenda, but our updates for WASM bindgen and WASMPEC have been very specific. And we've kind of already discussed that I guess there's kind of like a hole here. But I would love to have some of the like more specific features stuff just like discussed in this meeting about glue. I don't know, like what were the tough choices in the milestone? Or was anything tough? Or
it wasn't that hard. I mean, it was basically pushing back on scope creep and saying, how quickly can we get something out? And essentially, so we said, here are the things where we have proposals already accepted or in flight. And basically, like, what kind of documentation do we need to have to not kind of be embarrassed by ourselves? And that's what the O1 release is.
Oh, that seems cool.
Yeah.
With glue going to O.1, do you anticipate that we might want to include it in our templates moving forward? Or like make a new template that's like the WASMPEC glue template or something like this? For discovery purposes, I tell a lot of people that glue happened and they're like, what? And so I'm like, how can I help?
Yeah. Those are things that we should discuss and talk about. I don't have fully formed thoughts right now, but they are things that we should be thinking about.
Cool. I'll bring it up in the next meeting and we'll just keep kind of kicking it down. It's not something I can even act on right now. So,
so the thing is right now, it's like they're very utility level libraries. And like, I could imagine our template having a default kind of like hello world that does like some, creates a little DOM that says hello world or whatever, right? But like Glue right now doesn't have any of those facilities for working with the DOM. And so it's like coming up with interesting but also small examples that also show off the things that we currently have support for is like, I don't know. It's
probably just too early. Let's wait.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well.
It's a very low-key meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess also just like with the WASMPEC release stuff, since Drager, you're on, and you too, to what extent do you want me to block on reviews from you on things, or particular things you want me to make sure that y'all take a look at? Or if none, I'll just try and like push it forward. Who are you pointing at, Alex?
Is this for me or Drager?
It's for all of the people in the meeting.
Oh, okay. So I'm personally like pretty slammed on stuff for whatever reason this week, and so if you want to just land things without, I've already taken a look at stuff, and so if, as long as it works for you land it without me taking a look at it, I can always take a look at it later in my own time.
Okay, cool. Fitzgen, or you're also busy? This is ridiculous, huh?
Yeah. Gone through some weird cycles of being like extremely busy and then like suddenly having absolutely nothing to do for like a week and then all of a sudden extremely busy. I think maybe I like overcommit in those times when I do have cycles available.
I think I get into a similar pattern, so just mad empathy, yo.
Yeah.
All right, well, I feel like we would all benefit from the extra 12 minutes, so maybe we should just give ourselves that.
Yeah.
I'm alright with that.
Cool.
All right. See you all next week.
Bye.